Myra Thompson was 90 years old, a retired physicist from Clatterbridge Hospital, described by everyone who knew her as very alert and very independent. She lived alone in her home on Bold Way in Spittal on the Wirral. She had carers visiting regularly. One of them was Jayne Hill. Hill, 52, had been caring for Myra for 4 months. She had been to her home around 30 times. Myra trusted her. At 90, with Parkinson's disease and short-term memory loss, she depended on these visits. She had no reason to think one of the people looking after her was stealing from her. But money kept going missing from Myra's handbag. Myra noticed. She told her neighbors, and her neighbors, without telling Hill, installed a hidden camera in the bedroom. It was turned on remotely when carers arrived and switched off when they left. On April 12, 2024, the camera caught Jayne Hill taking money from Myra's purse. The neighbors reported it to the care agency. Hill was suspended. She denied it flatly, and then she did not tell her partner. Her partner, who worked for the same agency, continued to believe she was still employed. Hill told him she had an overnight appointment. She drove to Myra Thompson's home on the evening of April 22nd and sat outside in her car for almost 2 hours, waiting for the bedroom lights to go off. Then she let herself in using the key from the key safe. Myra woke up. She called out, "Who is there?" Hill picked up a metal flask from the bedside table and hit her over the head with it several times. Then she pressed a pillow over her face. The judge said Myra fought as hard as she possibly could. She was 90 years old with Parkinson's disease, fighting for her life in her own bed. In her first 2 police interviews, Hill denied any involvement. In the 3rd interview, she said she had gone round to apologize and return the money. The judge rejected that entirely. He said this was a premeditated murder intended to obstruct the course of justice. Hill had killed Myra to silence the only witness to her theft. It also emerged she had been stealing jewelry from other elderly clients, including a gold necklace from a 97-year-old woman. Jayne Hill pleaded guilty to murder and theft at Liverpool Crown Court on October 11, 2024. She was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22.5 years. She showed no remorse. Myra Thompson was described as very alert and very independent. She was, right to the end. It just was not enough. Kyle Pugh was 29 years old, a local MC and artist, a designer, a man his family described as a visionary with so much more to give. On March 22, 2022, he went to the home he used to share with his estranged wife Amy Pugh on Aston Drive in Newport. He was in a new relationship. They were separated. He was there to see his children. He had been sending voice notes to friends that day, making plans for later that night. He was alive and looking forward to the evening. He never made it. Amy Pugh hit Kyle with enough force to fracture his eye socket and his nose. Then she grabbed him, pulled him down, and compressed his neck. A chokehold or a forearm against his windpipe. She held it long enough that the blood flow to his brain stopped and he slipped into unconsciousness. And then she waited 20 minutes, not calling 999, not trying to help him, calling her father instead. Multiple times. One call lasted 20 minutes with a 6-minute video call inside it. While Kyle Pugh lay dying in her kitchen, Amy Pugh was on the phone deciding what story to tell. She used those 20 minutes well. When emergency services arrived at 9:15 p.m., they found Amy Pugh performing CPR on an unresponsive Kyle. She was playing the desperate partner. She was acting out, trying to save him. On the 999 call, she had told the handler that Kyle had hung himself with a belt. She told paramedics he had attempted to take his own life numerous times before. She said, "I've saved him so many times." As paramedics worked on him, she took a phone call from Kyle's new girlfriend on his phone. Kyle's phone was never recovered. She told officers, "Has he got a pulse or what? Because there is a chance he will survive this stupidity." Kyle died at Princess Royal Hospital the following day. The investigation was launched after Kyle's family raised concerns. The trial ran for 6 weeks at Stafford Crown Court. The judge said Amy had struck Kyle with such force that his nose and eye socket were broken, then compressed his neck until he lost consciousness. She then concocted a lie and staged a scene that blamed Kyle for his own injuries. The judge called those lies cynical and cruel. The jury found her guilty of murder. On September 5th, 2025, Amy Pugh was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 14 years. It should also be noted that in 2021, she had set fire to Kyle's art workshop and sent him videos of it burning while singing Ring of Fire. Kyle's family said he was taken from them far too soon and had so much more to give. Amy Pugh had known that. That was why she called her father before she called an ambulance. Lauren Harris was 29 years old, of no fixed address, originally from Llandudno in North Wales, a mother of two with a drug dependency that had started at 18. By mid-2023, she had found somewhere to land. A 65-year-old grandfather named Mark Wilcox had met her outside a pub in Colwyn Bay, struck up a conversation with a stranger the way he always did, and taken her in. Within weeks, she had moved into his seafront flat on Bayview Road. He paid for things. He supported her. He was generous with a woman who had very little, even as his own bank account was beginning to empty. Mark Wilcox was described by his family as funny, kind, generous, and loving. His son called him the cornerstone of the family. He had built a successful career in IT. He was well liked at his local pub, known for talking to anyone. He had no convictions, no enemies, and no reason to think the woman he had taken in would be the one to end his life. By November 2023, his finances were suffering. Harris had made 8 separate attempts to withdraw money from his bank accounts at 2 ATMs using his correct PIN, pulling out amounts between £20 and £50 each time. On the night of November 19th, she invited 2 men she had recently met back to the flat. David Webster, 43, and Thomas Whiteley, 3. Between the 3 of them, they carried convictions for assault, battery, wounding, theft, and burglary. Mark let them in. What followed, the prosecution described as brutal and senseless. Harris stabbed Mark Wilcox twice. The blade entered his lung and his pulmonary artery. 2 ribs were severely fractured. Webster smashed a vodka bottle over his head. Mark was found in his armchair, stabbed and battered. Forensic analysis confirmed the armchair was not the site of the attack. They had moved him. Then they ran. A vehicle they fled in was later found abandoned. 2 knives were recovered from inside it. DNA on the handles linked Webster. CCTV on Abigail Road captured them walking away from the scene. Their voices were recorded. Harris could be heard telling Webster to take his hat off. "Watching our every move," she said. Webster, walking away from a dying man, had removed a watch from Mark Wilcox's wrist while he was dying on the floor. Harris did not give evidence. She said nothing in her own defense. While the jury was deliberating her fate, she was heard in the dock singing Shania Twain, "Man, I Feel Like a Woman." The jury at Mould Crown Court returned unanimous guilty verdicts after 3.5 hours. As both were led to the cells after sentencing, Webster turned to Harris and called her a psychopathic bitch. "I hope you burn in hell," he said. Judge Mr. Justice Pepperell sentenced Lauren Harris to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 25 years. He told her directly, "I detect no remorse." Mark Wilcox had opened his door to a woman he had chosen to help. He had his correct PIN. He had his trust. He had no reason not to. That trust cost him everything. If you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of crime stories, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. Lyndsey McCool was 37 years old. Of Whetstone Lane in Birkenhead, Merseyside, she had no previous convictions for violence. She was described in the case as someone Jeremy Dickinson knew well, a regular presence in his social life, the kind of person he spent time with and felt comfortable around, the kind of person you let through your front door without thinking about it. Jeremy Dickinson was 57 years old. He lived alone on Albemarle Road in Seacombe on the Wirral. His family described him as a quiet, decent man, a man who had people in his life who cared for him, a man who had a home where he felt safe. He had every right to feel safest there. On March 28, 2017, Jeremy Dickinson was found dead inside that home. A post-mortem examination recorded the cause of death as a blow to the head. The person responsible was already inside his house before it happened. She had walked through the door he had opened for her. She knew the layout. She knew him. And when it was over, she went through his belongings and took his money. There was no cover story, no staged scene, no tearful performance for the emergency services, no attempt to shift blame onto an unknown attacker. Lyndsey McCool admitted what she had done. She pleaded guilty to the murder of Jeremy Dickinson at Liverpool, Crown Court. She also admitted stealing from him after she killed him. What makes this case sit on this list is not the confession. It is something simpler and more uncomfortable than that. Jeremy Dickinson did not die because a stranger broke into his home. He did not die because someone followed him off the street. He died because someone he already trusted was standing in his living room. Someone he had let in himself. Someone he would have had no reason to refuse. The statistics around violent crime are consistent and they are disturbing. The person most likely to cause serious harm to you is not an unknown face. It is someone already in your life. A partner, a family member, a friend, someone you drink with, someone whose number is already in your phone. Jeremy Dickinson's killer was all of those things. She was already there. Detective Inspector Paul Lamb of Merseyside. Police said this was a horrific attack, carried out on Mr. Dickinson in his own home, where he had every right to feel safest. That phrase has stayed with this case. His own home, the one place it should never have happened. At Liverpool Crown Court, Lyndsey McCool was sentenced to life, imprisonment with a minimum term of 17.5 years. Jeremy Dickinson was 57 years old, and he died in the place where he should have been safest, at the hands of someone he already knew. His door was open because he had opened it himself. He had no reason to keep it closed. Jemma Mitchell was not the kind of person anyone would suspect of what she did. Born in Australia in 1984 and raised in the UK, she had graduated from King's College, London, with first-class honours in human sciences, winning the Hamilton Prize for Anatomical Excellence. Her training included full-body human dissection. She had studied neuroanatomy and genetics at the highest academic level. She described herself on her professional website as attuned to the dissection of human cadavers. She knew exactly how the human body worked. She would use that knowledge in a way her lecturers could not have imagined. By 2021, Mitchell was living with her mother in a dilapidated £4 million house in Bronsbury Park, northwest London. The roof was gone. A fraudulent builder had taken £230,000 from them and disappeared. The property was essentially uninhabitable. Mitchell needed money badly, and she knew exactly where to find it. Mi Quen Chong, known as Deborah, was a 67-year-old Malaysian woman who had lived in London for more than 30 years. She was a widow. She had paranoid schizophrenia, had been sectioned, and believed she was in a relationship with Prince Charles. She was vulnerable, isolated, and her estate was worth over £700,000. Mitchell had met her through a North London church group in August 2020 and positioned herself as Deborah's spiritual healer. Deborah had offered Mitchell £200,000 toward the renovation costs. Then she changed her mind and withdrew the offer. That decision cost Deborah Chong her life. On June 11, 2021, Mitchell arrived at Deborah's home in Wembley carrying a large, empty blue suitcase. CCTV recorded her entering just after 8 in the morning. 5 hours and 13 minutes later, she came back out. The suitcase was considerably heavier. She also carried a bag containing Deborah's financial documents. The post-mortem recorded a comminuted skull fracture, multiple rib fractures, and injuries to the cervical vertebrae and larynx consistent with strangulation. Then Mitchell used the anatomical training she had spent years acquiring to do something the judge would later describe as profoundly shocking. She decapitated her. The head, the first 2 cervical vertebrae, and the larynx were surgically removed. She stored the suitcase in her back garden for 2 weeks. Deborah Chong's remains sat there for 14 days while Mitchell attended a hospital for a fractured finger. She blamed on a car door and forged a will leaving 95% of Deborah's estate to herself. On June 26th, she hired a car using the stolen identity of a deceased neighbor and drove 200 miles south to Devon. A tire blew on the motorway. An AA repairman noted a musty smell from the vehicle and her confused and evasive manner. The body was found the following day near Salcombe by a family on holiday. Mitchell was arrested on July 6, 2021. She gave no comment to every question she was asked. Not a single word of explanation for any of it. At the Old Bailey, she was unanimously convicted of murder on October 27, 2022, on October 28th, in the first ever televised sentencing of a woman in England and Wales. Judge Richard Marks KC sentenced Jemma Mitchell to life imprisonment with a minimum of 34 years. He called her extremely devious and said the act was done purely for financial gain. She will not be eligible for parole until 2056. Deborah Chong had opened her home to Mitchell, prayed beside her at church, and offered her money out of genuine trust. Mitchell used every part of that trust, and everything she had ever learned, to take Deborah completely apart. Virginia McCullough was 31 years old in June 2019, and she was living rent-free in her parents' home in Great Baddow, Essex, a house belonging to John and Lois McCullough, both in their early 70s, both retired, both entirely unaware of what their youngest daughter had been doing in their name. Virginia had told them she was training to become an artist, and that the career would eventually benefit the whole family. In reality, she had opened credit cards in their names, run up nearly £60,000 of debt, and spent years forging letters to cover the trail. She had been deceiving the people who housed her, fed her and trusted her completely. In March 2019, she began planning to kill them. She spent months accumulating prescription medication. In May 2019, she purchased a knife and implements to crush tablets. On June 17, 2019, she prepared a cocktail of drugs and mixed it into her father John's alcoholic drinks. John McCullough, 70, died from the poisoning. Her mother Lois, 71, survived the first attempt. Virginia came back with a hammer. She beat her. Then she took the knife she had bought weeks earlier and stabbed her multiple times in the chest. What happened next is the part that is almost impossible to process. Virginia McCullough built a makeshift tomb for her father from breeze blocks. Inside the house, covered it with blankets and her own artwork. She wrapped her mother's body in a sleeping bag and placed it in a wardrobe. And then she stayed. For 4 years. She cancelled her parents' medical appointments on their behalf. She told their GP they were unwell but managing. She told family members they had gone on holiday, then that the holidays had extended, then that they had decided to move. She sent birthday cards in their names. She replied to messages from their friends and relatives, as though they were still alive. She continued claiming their state pensions. She gambled £21,000 of their money through online betting sites. She sold items from the property. She had benefited to a total of nearly £150,000 by the time it ended. It ended because of a prescription that was never collected. John's GP, concerned by missed appointments and the uncollected medication, contacted Essex County Council's safeguarding team. Officers spoke to Virginia. She told them her parents were traveling and would return in October. On September 15, 2023, Essex police executed a search warrant and broke into the house. Virginia McCullough was arrested. She immediately confessed. She told officers where the bodies were. She told them where she had hidden the murder weapons. And then she said, "Cheer up, at least you have caught the bad guy." She paused. Then she added, "I know I do not seem 100% evil." At Chelmsford Crown Court, Virginia McCullough pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 36 years. She will not be eligible for parole until October 2059. The detective who led the investigation described her as an intelligent manipulator who killed her parents without a thought for them or for the people, who would spend years not knowing where they had gone. Natalie Bennett was 47 years old, living on Carr Lane East in Croxteth, Liverpool. She had a diagnosed personality disorder and suspected ADHD. She had 4 children. She had been in relationships before that had ended badly. By early 2023, she was in a relationship with a man 23 years younger than her, a man her own family had already grown worried about, a man her neighbors on the estate already knew by name. Casey Anderson was 24 years old. He was the eldest of 4 siblings, a former youth footballer with Everton, described by everyone who knew him as the family joker. His father said anyone new to the estate, Casey would be the first one over to introduce himself. His sister said he was the best big brother she could have had. He was a week away from turning 25. On March 11th, 2023, Casey came to Natalie Bennett's home on Carr Lane, East. What happened inside that house in the minutes that followed was captured, in part by a neighbor's doorbell camera. Not the beginning, not the argument, but what came after. Bennett stabbed him, not once, a deep wound to the chest that damaged his left lung and his heart. Slash wounds across his body, a wound to his leg. Casey made it out of the house. He crossed the driveway and collapsed on the path outside the neighbor's property. He was gravely injured, bleeding severely, barely able to speak. And as he lay there pleading for help, Natalie Bennett came back out of the house with the knife and tried to stab him in the head. The doorbell camera recorded all of it. Casey managed to call 999 himself. He told the operator repeatedly that he was dying. He was vomiting from the severity of the injuries, unable to speak clearly. He passed the phone to Bennett. Bennett told the call handler that Casey had stab wounds all over him, and she did not know who had done it. He has come in like that, she said. Her boyfriend, who she had just stabbed multiple times and then come back outside to attack again, had apparently arrived at her home, already stabbed by an unknown person. Inside the house, investigators found a clump of her hair on the floor, forcibly removed. Multiple sharp implements soaking in water in the kitchen sink, no blood on them. The house smelled strongly of cleaning products. At trial, Bennett claimed self-defense. She said Casey had attacked her first. She said she had only stabbed him once. She said she loved him and would never have hurt him like that. As he lay dying on a neighbor's path calling the police for help, she had called him a little rat. The jury unanimously rejected every part of her account. At Liverpool Crown Court, Natalie Bennett was found guilty of murder. On November 10th, 2023, she was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 18 years. She showed no emotion as the sentence was read. Then she gave the courtroom a thumbs up. Casey Anderson was a week from his 25th birthday. Rose West, 54 years old. In the quiet streets of Gloucester, a darkness had been festering for years, hidden behind the facade of a family. Home that appeared ordinary to neighbors and friends. To the outside world, Rose West seemed like a devoted wife and mother, blending seamlessly into the life she shared with her husband, Fred West. But beneath this veneer of domestic normality lurked a series of horrors that would make her name infamous across the UK. Rose, alongside Fred, was implicated in a string of brutal crimes spanning decades. Their victims were often family members, including children, who should have been protected and cherished. The house that should have been a sanctuary was instead a place of unimaginable torment, where torture, abuse, and murder became part of a chilling daily reality. The crimes were not sudden outbursts, but calculated, repeated acts that demonstrated a cruel and methodical approach to violence. To neighbors and even some family members, the West household appeared ordinary. Rose smiled, welcomed visitors, and maintained the appearance of a caring mother. No one could have imagined that behind closed doors, the couple orchestrated crimes that would shock the nation. Survivors and investigators later described the meticulous control and manipulation Rose exerted over her victims alongside her husband, creating an environment of fear, helplessness, and suffering. Police investigations, initiated after years of unreported abuse and suspicion, uncovered the horrifying reality. Forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and the confessions of Fred West revealed a pattern of deliberate and prolonged violence. Rose's involvement was clear. She assisted in the planning, execution, and concealment of multiple murders. acting as both enforcer and accomplice. The sheer scale of the abuse, compounded over years, made the case one of the most notorious in British criminal history. At Gloucester Crown Court, prosecutors laid bare the extent of the West's crimes. The court heard graphic accounts of torture, murder, and abuse, detailing how Rose actively participated in the systematic destruction of lives. Witnesses described the fear and manipulation experienced by the victims, illustrating the deliberate cruelty and control wielded by Rose. West, the judge, described her actions as cold, calculated, and utterly reprehensible, highlighting the betrayal of trust within a family unit. Following a lengthy trial, Rose West was convicted of multiple counts of murder and related abuses. On the 22nd of November 2024, she was sentenced to life imprisonment. Her crimes, alongside Fred West, cemented the couple's place as one of the UK's most infamous serial killer duos. Outside the courtroom, the public and victims' families expressed shock, grief, and disbelief. One investigator stated, "The cruelty here is almost unimaginable. It is a reminder of how evil can exist behind the most ordinary appearances." The story of Rose West serves as a chilling warning. Appearances can be deceiving, domestic life can conceal horrors, and trust can be exploited with deadly consequences. Her crimes left scars not only on victims, but on the consciousness of an entire nation, ensuring her name remains synonymous with calculated and prolonged evil. If you've made it this far and enjoyed deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. Beverley Allitt, 25 years old in 1991, at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire. A shocking series of events unfolded that would forever change perceptions of safety and medical care. Parents entrusted their children, some critically ill, infants, to the hospital's pediatric unit, expecting professionalism, compassion, and protection. But within the walls of the ward, Beverley Allitt, a seemingly dedicated pediatric nurse, turned trust into terror, committing acts that would horrify the nation. To colleagues and families, Beverley appeared attentive, kind, and competent. She interacted with children and parents with apparent warmth, blending seamlessly into the daily rhythm of the ward. Yet behind this professional facade lay a chilling reality. Between February and April 1991, Beverley systematically injected lethal doses of medication into vulnerable children. 4 of her young patients died, and 9 others suffered serious harm as a result of her deliberate actions. What initially appeared to be medical complications were soon recognized as a terrifying pattern of intentional harm. Hospital staff were initially baffled by the unusually high number of collapses, seizures, and critical incidents in the pediatric ward. Investigations revealed the victims were all under Beverley Allitt's care during these episodes. Her actions were calculated and premeditated, using her medical knowledge to avoid immediate suspicion. Parents and staff were horrified as the truth emerged. The very person trusted with the lives of children had become their source of danger. Police and medical investigators meticulously examined hospital records, medication logs, and patient histories. Toxicology reports confirmed that lethal doses of medication had been deliberately administered. Forensic evidence, combined with witness testimony, confirmed Beverley's direct involvement in both the deaths and serious injuries. Investigators described the events as a series of intentional assaults on the most vulnerable, carried out over weeks in a supposedly safe environment. At Nottingham Crown Court, prosecutors detailed the horrifying acts. Witnesses recounted the fear and confusion on the ward, while parents described the devastation of losing or seeing their children harmed. The court heard that Beverley Allitt acted with cold calculation, targeting children who could not defend themselves. The judge described the crimes as utterly shocking, deliberate and cruel, emphasizing the betrayal of trust inherent in a nurse harming her patients. Following a thorough trial, Beverley Allitt was convicted of multiple counts of murder and causing serious harm to children. On the 1st of May 1993, she was sentenced to life imprisonment. Her crimes became some of the most notorious hospital murders in British history, leaving a permanent mark on the medical community and public consciousness. Outside court, families expressed shock, grief and disbelief. One parent said, "We never imagined someone could do this in a hospital." Beverley's actions destroyed the lives of so many innocent children. Her case remains a chilling reminder that even in places of care, vigilance is essential, and trust, once broken, can have devastating consequences. Joanne Sharkey was 28 years old in March. In 1998, she lived in Croxteth, Liverpool. She had no previous convictions. To everyone around her, she was an ordinary young woman living an ordinary life. Nobody knew she was pregnant. Nobody knew because she had made certain of it. On March 14th, 1998, a man walking his dog near Gulliver's World theme park in Warrington came across something in the undergrowth, 2 knotted bin bags. He stopped. He looked closer. Inside was the body of a newborn baby boy. The infant was full term, believed to have been alive at birth. Wads of tissue were found in his mouth and throat. He had been there for some time before he was found. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew who his mother was. Local people organized a collection and arranged a funeral. He was buried in Warrington Cemetery a few months later. The community named him Baby Callum, after the Callans area where he had been found. The headstone, paid for entirely by donations from local residents, read Baby Callum, precious child of God, laid to rest. July 27, 1998, with love, from the people of Warrington. For 25 years, nobody came forward. Police stored DNA recovered from the scene on the national database. They ran public appeals. They cross-referenced hospital admissions, midwife records, GP referrals. Nothing matched. Nothing moved. The case went cold and stayed cold. Then, in 2022, a man in Liverpool was arrested in connection with an unrelated matter. A routine DNA swab was taken and added to the database. It returned a familial match to Baby Callum. That man was Joanne Sharkey's son. Joanne Sharkey was 55 years old when officers knocked on her door. In July 2023, she had been 28 in March 1998. She had kept this secret for 25 years. She had built a life. She had other children. She had grandchildren. She had a family who had no idea. Nobody had known. Nobody had suspected. Nobody had been given any reason to. Police established that Sharkey had concealed the pregnancy entirely. She gave birth alone, almost certainly in her own home. The baby died in the hours that followed, tissue found in his airway. She placed him into bin bags, drove to Warrington in the early hours, and left him in the undergrowth near a theme park. Then she went home, and she stayed in that life for 25 years without breaking. Charged initially with murder, Sharkey pleaded guilty at Liverpool Crown Court on March 6, 2025, to manslaughter on grounds of diminished responsibility. Psychiatric evidence was accepted showing her mental state had been significantly impaired at the time. She also admitted concealing the birth of a child. On April 4, 2025, she was sentenced to 2 years suspended. She walked out of court free. Baby Callum's headstone still stands in Warrington Cemetery. The people of that community paid for it without knowing. His mother was living 20 miles away. They did not know she would one day admit what she had done and walk back out into the world uncaged. 10 women. 10 victims who never saw it coming, because the people who killed them were already inside their lives. If this video made you stop and think, if any one of these cases is still in your head right now, hit that subscribe button. Because this is what we do here every single time. We do not skim. We do not summarize. We go into the details that other channels skip. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Which of these 8 cases hit you the hardest? Which one are you still thinking about right now? I read every single comment, and your answers shape what we cover next. If you made it to the end of this video, you are exactly the kind of viewer this channel is built for. Subscribe, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one.